You know, when you're a salesperson, you have the power to make a profound impact, not only in the business world, but also in the lives of those you touch. So, what's holding you back on making those sales? Let's have ourselves a pocket sized pep talk because I can tell you what holds many back. Their values don't line up with what they sell. It's a very important topic, and I've got a very accomplished guest to help us sort it out.
A Pocket Sized Pep Talk, the podcast that can help energize your business and your life with a quick, inspiring message. Now, here's your host, Rob Jollis.
Today's guest, Stacey Hall, has coached thousands of entrepreneurs on how to attract sales, satisfaction, and success. She's a best-selling author, a TEDx presenter, and a leading social media marketing expert. She's the founder of Success with Stacey Hall, and her book is Selling from Your Comfort Zone, The Power of Alignment Marketing. Barrett Kohler book, my favorite publisher, and one of my favorite guests because I've only had 4 people on twice out of 350 podcasts so far, and Stacey's one of them. Good to have you back, Stacey.
It is a delight to be here. I am sufficiently honored, to be perfectly honest, Rob, because I know you make it a policy to keep new voices here. So thank you for inviting me to come back and continue the conversation we started the first time.
Yeah, you bet. And I'll tell you, I only bring back the really, really good ones. So you're in that good ones category. And let's jump right in. And you know, as they say, everybody has a story. So I want to hear a little bit about your personal journey that led you to recognize how important alignment is with what you're selling.
All right. Well, I'm going to tell you, I'm no different than most salespeople. I didn't want to go into sales. Truly, like, keep it away from me. I'm not a salesperson. In fact, it's hard for people who know me now to believe how I was when I was younger, which was, if you looked at me the wrong way, I would say boo and I'd cry. Honestly, truly. I know it's hard to believe.
I believe that.
So, but the reason I was very well versed in what sales, quote unquote, has been and what most people think it still is, because my dad was in sales from the time I was in elementary school till I was working on my own, if you will. And I got to see the good, I got to see the bad, and I got to see the ugly through his eyes. I got to hear all the training tapes, right? Because I'm going back all the way to the cassette tapes, right?
Oh, yeah.
All the way till modern day selling. And my father has now since passed.
Mm-hmm.
And I just knew I wasn't cut out for it. Not the way it was, not the way it was being taught, not the way it was being trained, and not the way it was incentivized. But I love to write, I love to communicate behind the scenes. So I was everything in marketing, advertising, radio and television production, advertising account executive, marketing director, and manager, and all of that. And I reached a point in working with a Fortune 100 organization that I had had enough of that experience. And I decided to become a coach. I was given the opportunity to teach classes for the Small Business Development Center. And when I realized the reason they selected me and the curriculum I was supposed to teach was to teach entrepreneurs how to be like Coca-Cola, this is nonsense.
Right.
And so that's the birthing of my coaching consulting business. And when I realized I was now in business for myself, I also realized, oops, I just became a salesperson. So there's my backstory, Rob.
That's interesting. You know, I always say, you know, a book finds you. A lot of times I help people in career transition. Careers typically find us. We don't find them. And it's interesting because I also didn't think I would necessarily go into sales. And I had a father who was in sales and some uncles that were in sales. But, and that's why I want to talk to you about alignment, because at 21 years old, I went to work for the New York Life Insurance Company. And I was one of 2 people, I think, under the age of 25. And I had an alignment challenge because I was selling a lot of 21-year-olds whole life insurance because there was the big board at the office, and we were tasked with 2 apps a week and 10 a month, and don't let it catch you in the bullpen. And so I was selling people a product that I could see the need for it. I just couldn't see the need for it in my particular group of people. And that's why I love this topic, because it's not something I read about. It's something I lived through. So for you, and I'm curious, was there ever, and we'll get to kind of theories and really get into alignment, but part of that backstory, did you ever have a crisis of alignment for yourself?
When I was working for that company at a certain point,
Yeah.
what they had wanted me to do. And then by that time, I'd become pretty perverse. I'll just say there's a period of time in my business life where it's like, if I'm not feeling it, I'm not doing it. And
Right.
so that's what set me out to do my own business. Now, and that was my first book's been out 23 years. So this was a couple years. So let's say 25 years ago.
Mhm.
Once I decided I was going to help entrepreneurs grow their business without wasting time, money, and energy, I've never looked back. That has always been my sense of alignment, if you will. I can appreciate being an entrepreneur myself, growing a business myself, the importance of alignment in growth in
Yeah.
every way. So I would say that I chose to be in alignment and to teach people alignment. So I've stayed in alignment.
Yeah, yeah, you're smart. It took me a while to become an entrepreneur. So I was working for some corporations with some products I didn't necessarily align with, but it was a job. The beauty of of being an entrepreneur, and it doesn't always work this way, is usually because it's our business, we're pursuing something that we believe in. But a lot of times we work for another company, we are selling something that I sure hope we believe in. So let's get at that issue right now. I don't think a lot of people wake up in the morning and say, today I'm going to make a promise I can't keep to a client, or sell something I don't believe in. And yet it can become an issue. So why do you think people struggle with that? And here we are now kind of crawling into alignment with waking up going, well, I got to sell it.
Gotta sell it. Okay, so you're hitting on the statistic that shocked the bejeebus out of me when I learned it 2 years ago, and I know that it hasn't changed. And that is 55% of salespeople will say they know they're selling the wrong thing, right?
Oh,
And then another 25% will say that they're not even sure they want to be in sales. So that's a lot of us who are waking up saying, how am I going to do this job every day? And my answer to that is, why are you not selling something that you feel good about? Like, I still can't get an answer to that. There's so many companies, there's so many products. We could be creating our own. And listen, yeah, I just said I sell alignment. That's what I'm selling, teaching people how to get in alignment with what they do. But I often say, because Rob, I am one major chocoholic. I mean, you that could be my middle name. Okay. If I wasn't doing what I was doing, I'd be selling chocolate.
really?
And I have 1,000 ways that I could sell chocolate. I've thought about this quite a lot. And that I'm sure every one of us, like if you really wanted to help the world or you really wanted to have fun, what could you sell that would make you feel good? And so in answer to your question, I'm putting it out there with a question. If you are not waking up feeling good about what you're selling, what would you sell that would make you feel good?
Yeah.
It's that simple.
Yeah. It is that simple. And by the way, if you've never been to Hershey, Pennsylvania, and gone on the I'm not sure they still have a post pandemic, but it was a wonderful Hershey ride where you got into a Hershey Kiss and you
Yeah.
watched how chocolate was made going through that Hershey Kiss.
I'll leave it there. I'm sure it was fun. I'm a gourmet chocoholic.
Oh, okay.
Let me
All right. So
clarify.
leave it
I'm a
there.
gourmet, no soy in my chocolate, the real thing.
All right, all right. So let's get back to the issue. I'm going to sort of take a slightly different side to this because I lived it as a 21-year-old.
Yep.
Uh, and I hope employers are listening too. Yes, why would anybody take a job, sell a product that they don't believe in? But the problem is we have a lot of companies out there that are running what I call hiring mills,
Yes.
meaning they're in an industry where they'll make certain promises to a lot of times younger people or
Yes.
people who have never sold before. Matter of fact, a lot of times it's teachers they'll make, and
Yes.
that I remember in the insurance industry, not beating up the insurance industry, always be a New York Life man. Don't worry, folks. But I do know I saw a surprising number of teachers being recruited because selling was the opposite of teaching. And when I say that, I mean teaching is a very structured program day.
Yes.
And selling is you want freedom, we're going to promise you freedom. My point to you, Stacey, is this. Is that there are a lot of companies that will make certain promises, bring people in with the intent of, well, we're going to bring 10 in, and if three of them make it, that's fine. We'll bring in 10 more. So sometimes it's not it's people think they're getting into something that they're not.
And I'm not disagreeing with that. That's why I'm
Mhm.
saying well, there's responsibility on both parts. The I believe, and studies will show and prove this out, that since our COVID days,
Mhm.
more and more people are very much concerned with core values and with living from those values. Okay. And this is our younger generation more so than anybody else. So I don't feel too much like I have to warn them because I think they figure that out pretty quick. When they go in, if there's been inconsistency, inauthenticity, if what they're being told to do doesn't line up, we know all about the quiet quitting stuff that's going on.
Yeah.
So that's why I started with that is I'm speaking to those folks. It's like you don't even have to quiet quit. Just go find something you love to do because there's companies out there that will align with your values. So instead, I'll speak now to the companies, right?
Okay.
Which is you can go that way, but you'll continue to keep these big gaping holes in your sales team because those are studies that have also been done. Companies are having a lot of difficulty keeping people. So in my book, I do talk about the alignment marketing formula and how you first, if you are hiring, help a potential hiree or even once they're on board, identify where they can get into alignment with your company. Instead of you telling them, there's a way to help them find their point of alignment. And when a salesperson feels that connection, it's like almost a magnetic connection. It's connection. They will then find the way to be able to communicate with an audience that makes sense for them to communicate with.
Mhm.
They become much easier to manage, quote unquote. It becomes much easier to lift them up towards success. And I make the case for all of this in the book. But that's why I want to say if we're using old school sales training, sales motivation, sales hiring tactics, well, look at the results. What are you getting? You're getting lots of turnover, which is not good for customer relations. And I said I worked for companies, but not as salespeople, but in the marketing department where I got to see all of that.
Right.
And I won't name names here because I am being critical, but two very large organizations, global organizations, and that was one of the issues all the time. And when we would do marketing analysis, they would say, like, I'm always seeing a different person. How can I ever build relationship if there's always going to be a different person?
Right.
Relationship is the key to making sales and long-term sales. We don't want to churn people through. We want them to want to stay and feel good about staying, I would think, if I want to make sales.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. And so there's two sides of this coin. You're hitting on we're both hitting on that one side of the corporation's responsibility. And Stacey and I are very familiar with WIFMs. So what's in it for you to be listening to Stacey about this right now is there's an enormous number of numbers out there about when you have a dissatisfied customer, how many people they're going to talk about that experience. In my industry, we had what was called orphan leads. And so those few sales that did go through, and a lot of times it was the uncles and aunts and sisters and brothers, they become orphan leads and they begin to kind of flow through the system. I one time followed up on an orphan lead, and the first thing the person said was, "You're my sixth agent in 3 years." That's not going to help the company. That's not going to help the industry. So we know that can give the industry a black eye. There's one with them. Let's talk about the person. When a salesperson comes in and they're out of alignment with what they're selling, Stacey, talk to me about the potential damage that can create to the individual now.
Okay, well, first off, we have much more educated consumers, be it business to consumer or business to business. People are smarter, right? If anything, if the backlash to fake news has been that people know they have to beware, like buyer beware. We don't need to tell people that anymore.
Right.
You add to it AI, right? So we're all questioning authenticity right now. We're all questioning people's motives. So it's even harder, I would say, to build relationship these days at the beginning. People, we just have to expect they're less trustful than they've ever been. So if we, as a salesperson, don't do our homework, so I'm going to add to what you asked, okay? Because without it, it's not what I'm going to say wouldn't make
Are
sense.
you in the process of making my question even better?
I don't know. We'll see. And that's my intention.
Okay.
Maybe a little fuller.
All right.
Answer.
Fuller and better. I'm all for it. Keep going.
Okay. We must do our homework. So I was just on a conversation with somebody about DISC, right? DISC personality.
Yep.
And she was talking about when she used to work for a major organization, and she was in the accounting department, let's put it that way, and she was good at it, but it wasn't her natural tendency. So when she went home, her first thing wasn't to pick up and read more accounting books. She started noticing that she was loving personal growth, leadership, that sort of thing. And so she shifted herself into positions like that. So where I'm going here is if we're not willing to do the homework to prepare to meet a client and learn about their industry, if we're noticing that is not a joy for us, and we think we're going to be able to skate through, right? Take a script, go in, pretend like we know what's going on with this person in their industry. The likelihood of being able to have a true conversation that leaves the other person wanting to see you again, wanting to hear what you have to say, is very unlikely. They may humor you. They may say, listen, it's nice. Thanks. Leave your information. I got to go. I got another meeting, because they probably do. But good luck when you do the follow-up, getting them back into a conversation.
Yeah.
So this alignment with what we're selling, why we're selling it, and who we're selling it to makes all the difference when we have that first conversation.
Yeah. Well, and that's why, and let's start getting into the alignment formula now. That's why I wanted to talk to you, because I'm such a big fan of process. Right now, I think people are going, yeah, I think I may have heard that before, but we're going to put a formula out there for you. I do think that sometimes people are a little bit unconsciously incompetent. I completely agree with you. There's just so much more data available that really wasn't there before. But it's just interesting to me because, and I also think sometimes we just wish things will work and want things to work,
Yes.
and can convince ourselves that we're working. We got a little voice going, No, this is never going to work. But we bully that voice a little bit, unfortunately. Uh, Talk to me about the alignment marketing formula that you're
Okay.
developed.
All right. So it's three parts, but the
Hmm.
first part actually has four subsegments. Now that sounds very clinical for those of you who like facts and figures. For those of you who don't, let's just get into what it is. We have to be in alignment with ourselves. And some of you might have just gone, oh, this is woo-woo. No, no, it's not. It's called Let's Be Practical. It's very practical. Before we even think about selling anything, we have to know ourselves. What strengths do we have? What experiences have we had? What skills do we have? And what are our values? I've used it before, but truly, we must know what we stand for. And I always use the lighthouse example, which is behind me. What am I standing for? Or what am I standing on? Like, where have I come from and what am I bringing to the party? The second subpart of alignment is now, why am I selling what I'm selling? This is where it's like, so what am I standing for? I know what I'm standing on. If I'm going to now represent a product, a service, a company, myself, why? What am I standing for? What is my messaging? Who? Well, we're about to get into the who, but definitely why am I doing this? What's in it? You could say, asking myself as a salesperson, what's in it for me to sell this?
Okay.
It doesn't matter if it's just money, okay, but maybe there's more to it. Know why you're selling it. Then the third is, so who's likely to want to buy it? And not listening to the training that says, if you're a good enough salesperson, anybody would buy it. Okay. If you're a good enough salesperson, you can sell ice to someone who lives in a frozen place, because we're not allowed to use that phraseology anymore. That's how, like, that came from my childhood, listening to those tapes, right?
Ice to people in cold weather. I got you. Keep
Yes.
going.
Yes. Okay. That's not true. Not in this day and age, if it ever was. What is true is if you have a solution to a problem and people have that problem, they'll want to hear about the solution. It's our job to figure out who would have that problem. So that's being in alignment with the people who would have the problem. And then instead of using canned scripts, being in alignment with our story, Rob asked me to share my story right from the start. I have my story. It is not a fake story, it is a true story. I have learned how to communicate it in a way that would make sense to somebody who wants to learn how to get in alignment with themselves and doesn't particularly like the idea of being a salesperson. That's my audience.
Hey, can I jump in
So,
just 10 seconds on that,
yeah,
what you just said? The story. I'm with you. Do you have multiple versions of that story based on who you're
yes.
talking to? Good.
Well, let me put it this way. My life has different aspects to it. So it's not like I make up a different story.
No.
I tell a
Agreed.
different portion of my story depending upon who I'm talking with. Yes. And
Perfect.
I would expect that we would all do that.
Good. Good.
Okay.
Yep.
And if I've done my research well, Rob and I know each other, in the interest of full disclosure, we used to actually even do a LinkedIn Live together. I know Rob and I know he likes to chat. And if I had done my research and I was only given 15 minutes to have a conversation with somebody the first time, I would not be talking this long about my story. My story would be that quick. And then I would be asking more questions than I'd be saying, than I'm doing here on the podcast. So,
Perfect.
messaging, being in alignment with my message with myself, but more importantly, what message would be in alignment with somebody who has the problem I can solve?
Right.
And that takes homework. So that's the first part of alignment.
Okay.
I mean, that's the first part of the alignment marketing formula.
Right.
The second part is pretty easy. It's and I call this the new ABCs: alignment, then belief, believing in what we're saying cannot happen unless we're in alignment. And belief allows us to have empathy for the other person. If we're concerned about how we're coming across, if we're not feeling sure in ourselves that we can help somebody, we don't believe in ourselves. And that lack of belief makes it impossible to extend empathy to the other person. And it isn't the facts and figures that make a sale. It is, can we give somebody an emotionally compelling reason to buy?
Yeah.
And those two E's, empathy is what helps create the emotionally compelling emotion.
Yeah. Stacey, just 3 seconds on that. It's so important what you just said. I just needed to breathe. Like we just pulled a cork out of a bottle of wine. To me, it's like music. And when you don't believe and you can't achieve that level of empathy or even delivery, it's as if instead of you're singing bing, you're going bing. It's just a half a note off and it doesn't look authentic. So, folks, they're all important. They're all going to be important to different pieces. I want to tell you that one hit home with me big time. Keep going.
Well, I'm thrilled that you did. I know that it does because when I say, I'm going to say you're masterful, because to say master sounds like it's manipulation. But Rob genuinely makes someone feel like he cares about them right from the start. And I'm sure that's why your podcast is so successful.
Thank you.
To
Appreciate
be
that.
able to do that is because he does believe. It's not only that he believes in himself, he believes in 100% what he's selling, why he's selling it, and in the messaging to be able to communicate how much he cares. And we feel it. That's what we feel is his belief. So right there, role model.
Thank you.
Well, and belief is the bridge between alignment and consistency.
Yeah.
And listen, there are lots of folks that I admire who talk about consistency and ways to stay in consistent action, and all of them are important. But if we're not in alignment and we don't have belief, there would be no compelling reason to even want to be consistent at what we're doing. So we can't take consistent actions, consistent research, consistent learning, consistent growth, consistent communication if we're not in alignment and believe in that alignment. But when we have all three of them in that order, and we wake up in the morning, we know we are living from the new ABCs. All there is to do is keep being consistent, and sales will come. It will come. It's like a mathematical formula, and we will have satisfaction because we're doing what we love to do, and the other person will have satisfaction because their problem's solved, and we will achieve success in however we define it.
Yeah.
That's the new ABCs of sales.
Beautiful. Really, really well said. Let's drop back on 2 points you made.
Yeah.
One of them, and I just need to talk people through this a little bit. You made a point. I can't disagree with you. You can't just sell for the money, and yet there are people listening right now who it's intoxicating. It can get that's one of those that looks really good on paper. Okay. How do you and I'm gonna let you do it. You're my guest, but how do you and I convince people that obviously money is a factor in what we do? We want to be able to stay in, this is an insurance term, but stay in our own worlds and take care of our families but how do we get people to realize that it's a false lead when we're just going in it for the money?
Okay. Well, what I love is this is an easy answer. Rob, I'll be surprised if you don't agree with me on this one. The good news is I don't have to convince. Go out there with a mindset and believing that you're going to make money, okay? And you're only there to make money. Let's see how many sales you actually make. There's the proof, okay?
Right. Yeah.
And because we can smell, how else did the term commission breath get created, okay? you just described somebody, commission breath is on people who you can see the dollar signs in their eyes, like in the cartoon.
Yeah. Yeah, well said. And it's funny. So now I've decided I'm talking to anyone who's starting out in sales because that one's going to get by you. You're absolutely right. And I think a great way of answering that question, I'm just going to put a chair, basically say what you just said is anybody who's struggling with that question who has been selling, just take a moment, think back and remember why that previous job you had or the one before it, where you were chasing the money, how'd that go for you? Absolutely. Couldn't disagree with you. Let's go to another one. Wait.
Hold on. Before you do,
Yeah.
there is one, there's always the exception to the rule.
Yeah.
Okay. I would say go become a trader and a broker. That's what I would say. Like if you're really fascinated by money, then go sell to people who are interested in money, because then you'd be in alignment. But if
Good.
you're selling anything else, especially something where caring is involved, probably not going to be so successful.
Although I work probably with more financial advisors than any other client base. And I'll tell you, if again, to your words, if you're going into it and your number one goal is to make money, it ain't going to work for you. It's a great profession where the ceiling's very high, but go in there because you want to help people protect their future, help their children get their education that they've dreamt of, help them not only get to that retirement, but that little fishing hut they were looking for. Dream of that at night, and you'll have a very nice ceiling behind you in terms of income while you're at it. But I'm with you. Here's the one where I love playing the contrarian sometimes. So it's easy to say, hey, these sales scripts, they're nonsense. I had the live, die, quit story. I had the 100-man story. I had stories I had to memorize. But I'll give you an opportunity. If you say, Rob, I can't think of one, I'll try one. Can you think of a reason when a script is good?
I can. It's going to be when somebody's brand new. That said, it's the second best. Okay. I can't think of a time when it would be first best. But if somebody is learning an industry as well as learning the product line, I think it would be, I'm going to liken it to what actors do. So actors, no matter how much they love their character, they get the lines, right? Because they didn't write them for the most part. They get their script. They start reading the script. They learn the script. But I have heard on average, an actor does not consider themselves off book, meaning can do it, repeat it, remember, and be credible until they have memorized it, recited it 200 times. And I would say along the way, that's when their own personality or their own flavor on it starts to come through, when they're able to bring their own experience from the past into it and make it real. So that would be my answer, is if you don't have your own story, then use the script, but truly as a starting point from which to infuse it with your own experience.
Okay. All right. Now, did say earlier, Rob likes to chat, so I want to chat on this one a little bit.
Yeah.
Two things. And again, I remember I'm playing the role of a contrarian because I love doing that when you and I are together. And again, Stacey and I did plenty of LinkedIn lives, and I was always looking for a way to disagree. I couldn't very often because we really do align on most things. We're aligned here. The thing I like about a sales script, two points what makes. Thing I like about a sales script before everybody shoots me is you learn it and then you quickly unlearn it in a sense. At Xerox, we learned a 10-page script and it was a rite of passage and you needed every line. And then once you learned it, you were told, now don't ever do that again. What we've given you is basically a bank of very clear and articulate thoughts so that will be springing up, based on what the customer's asking for. And sometimes it's trying to go over something that's very complicated and learning how to do it simply. Stacey, I don't think it's the salespeople that misuse the scripts. I'm going back to management again that forgets to say, don't ever do that again. We're just giving you kind of a basic piece that you can stylize rather than just feed you to the wolves. I think when that message isn't delivered, we've got people going out there reciting scripts. And that's where, obviously that ain't going to work. Okay.
No. And
But,
I'm going to tell you, you asked me if I was ever not in alignment, and you just sparked an experience for me.
Okay.
I was not selling on my own. I had decided to partner with somebody, and we were seeing a client that they knew better than I, or a prospective client that they knew better than I did. And so I was taking a back seat for the most part. And we went in to assess the situation. And as the person was talking about their needs, I kept coming up in my head. I'm like, oh my God, we could do this and we could do that. And we could do this and we could do that. And I was all prepared to talk. And when he finished, he looked at me and said, can you help me with that? And I literally, my mouth was open. I was going to say yes. And my partner said, I don't know. And truly, if the window had been open, I'm not sure you could have stopped me picking her up and throwing the window. However, he said, he looked at her and he said, that's the answer I wanted to hear. And that was when I learned to be in alignment with asking questions instead of knowing the answers. And so in answer to what you just said, Rob, that's the problem. Sales trainers incentivize salespeople to know the answers.
Right.
Instead of, let's keep brainstorming questions that you might hear.
Right. And now you've sparked me. I won't blame this necessarily on the sales trainers, just sales training industry. How many companies have you walked into, Stacey, or a sales trainer, where they've said, oh, we've been sales trained 5 times already. And then you look at it and go, oh, you mean you've been product trained 5 times already? And somebody kept calling it sales training, but you kept learning new pieces of your product. For goodness sakes, and this one really bugs me, there are an enormous number of continuing education credits in the sales industry that deal completely with product training and not actually how to communicate and ask questions and listen, which Stacey and I will say till we're blue in the face, but we'll stop saying it when salespeople actually do it. Okay. But they're not being trained that way. They're being trained on product, told they've been trained to sell. And so they go out and recite product. Again, we're trying to figure out where to aim this thing. It's really sometimes at the sales training industry. Don't worry.
That's right.
You got 2 trainers that written some books on this. We're not going to take you down that road.
Yeah. And we do stuff together.
Yeah.
I'm just going to put that out there.
Yep.
You can get us both if you want.
Absolutely. All right. 2 more things, I'll let you go. One is I want to touch back on the acting piece of learning that script and doing it. What was that? How many thousand times? What did you say?
200.
200
times.
That makes me feel better. Not sure if you knew this, but I was an actor. 2 of my children are actors. Everybody does it differently, but I was basically trained by a couple of good directors. And the best director I ever had might have been a different way of doing it, but I'm just throwing this out there. Instead, I don't want you getting near learning that script until you learn your character. Okay. In other words, putting that authenticity. First character I ever played was Benny Van Buren and Damn Yankees. I was 16 years old playing an 80-year-old, a 70-year-old. But that director kept hitting me. What kind of car does he drive? What kind of cereal does he eat? What does his house look like? And what's his dog's name? And the first 10 times I said, what is the guy, crazy? And then I started thinking like Benny Van Buren. I started walking like Benny Van Buren. And then I got a hold of that script and it made a lot more sense to me. So I'm not sure which comes first, the apple or the cart, what is the cart or the horse? But
I love your way. I'm just going to say, to me, that's alignment. That's the research, right?
Right.
I did mean to cut you up. I'm sending it back to you. Yes.
Okay. Well, good. And I always felt confident. It's so much easier to learn that other side when you know who you are and you know your character. Okay. last thing, what I really, this fascinated me. I was kind of looking at some of the things about you, and you talk about the scale of sales, okay,
Yes.
to stop wasting prospects' time and perhaps even our own. Let's close on that. I want to hear you talk about that a little bit.
All right. I'm about to utter something that will make me very unpopular with a lot of sales trainers if I haven't done it already. And that is, I don't believe in following up. Like, I know that's sacrilegious.
Boom. Yep.
I don't think it's necessary to follow up. And I don't ever want to be in the position of following. I want to be in the position of leading. So, more than semantics, the scale of sales helps me be able to learn how to do that. Instead of continue, so again, we start by getting to know the person, we do the research, we've got our questions for them prepared. So they're telling us about their needs, their wants, their timelines, all of that. That's what I'm doing, especially in a first conversation, whether it's on Zoom, on the phone, or in person. I'm gathering more information. And then I can say, all right, so, and we know the phrase, if I could, right? The phrasing, if I could, honest meaning, if I could solve these problems and I could meet your budget and all the things we're told to ask, if I could, normally we would say, would you buy? Okay. I don't. I say, if I could, on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to take action on what I'm offering? With 10 being, Stacey, I got to do it right now, right away. Let's get it happening. And 1 being, I've given you my time and I don't ever want to see you again. And I will actually say this. And of course they laugh, but it's true. Where are you on the scale now? And if they are an 8 or less, what I say is, I understand this is not a priority for you to solve right now. When do you feel it might be? And would you like to have another conversation at that time?
Where do you put that in?
After I've asked all the questions and they're telling me everything that they need, they want, they desire. And I've even, to tell you the truth, before I say a lot about my product, because what's the
Oh, I
point?
hope
I just be
so.
flapping my gums.
Oh, I hope so. Yeah, no, I wanted you to say that. We're not even at the solution right now. I
No.
actually love that question and use it myself. I'm usually when I'm hunting for a problem, and Stacey and I will also remind you that the problem shapes the need shapes the solution. We're not talking about solutions. We're not even talking about needs. We're trying to understand the customer's problems. And sometimes they'll hold them to they'll hold back a little bit because they don't want to give any buying signals. So we start with trust. But I'm with you. I have a decision point of, do you think it's worthwhile even looking at other ideas? I don't walk in and say, hi, do you think it's worthwhile? I'm going to spend some time getting to know who you are and what you're doing. And I'm going to see if, what issue really brought me here. And I love that question and use it myself on a scale when somebody's telling me, yeah, but we've got that fixed. Yeah, but that's moving pretty well. Rather than say, then what the heck did you bring me in here for?
Right.
We'll throw that scale out and I'll never get a 10 or a 9. And my follow-up
I
is
do
worse.
sometimes.
Well, people like me. They love this face. I've been
Yes,
lucky.
I'm
I've been
saying I'm
lucky.
sure you get a 9 or a 10. Come on, don't say you never do. Of course you do.
All right, my nose went 3 inches longer than it should be,
Yeah.
but I'm still going to say no. But all right, yes, occasionally I guess I do, but I'm not sure how I even got there. If I've spent 15 minutes and the client says I don't even think it's worthwhile looking at other ideas, I don't think I've sold very well in that situation. But let's not bury the lead. My point is, when we get that 8, I'll even take a 9, by the way. I'm curious just what's keeping it from being a 10. And that enters into the conversation that we're really looking for here. And oh, by the way, we're both qualifying the prospect. If it's a legitimate 9 out of 10, et cetera, we don't have a prospect here. So I'm with you. But it's a wonderful question. I just want people to hear we have to make sure to know where to ask that question. It's not the first question out of Stacey's mouth.
No,
Yeah.
it's the after I've asked all the others, and I go in knowing about the industry, knowing what they're likely to say their problem is, but I'm asking them to tell me. I might say along the way, would you like a tip or two that I've seen works for dealing with that? Because I do want to build that relationship and trust. So I'll give away a tip or two.
Yeah.
But then when they're done and I feel like I've asked all the questions I could ask, that's when I ask on the scale of sales, if I could solve these problems with what I represent, where are you today on a scale
Right.
of 1 to 10?
Right.
I have gotten tens because that's why they took the time to meet with me. And if we can, and there's the alignment. I will even on a 9, Rob, I'll tell you, I know they're a 10. But I will say, jokingly, so if you're a 9, why aren't you a 10? And never will say, because I don't want to be too obvious. I don't want to look
Right.
too anxious, right?
Right. Right.
But then we go, okay, great. So how much time do you have so that I can present the solution to you now? But if they're an 8 or less, they are making it very clear they're not going to buy that day. And I don't know if they'll ever buy. So then, yes, that's the question, is almost not a question. It's like, I want to prove to them I'm not here to beg.
Right.
So I understand it's not a priority for you today. When do you think it might be? And would you like to plan a time to talk then or check in with each other then? Let's plan it now. I get it on my schedule. I make sure they get it on their schedule.
Yeah.
If they are not going to put it on their schedule, I already know. Move on. Move
Yep.
on.
Yep. And in listening to you just now, I can see that, and we're talking about alignment. We're almost talking apples and oranges. So I want to clarify something, because I could see that you were saying, I can't believe Rob never gets a no here or never gets a 10. Remember, I'm asking a slightly different question. If I'm selling a Xerox copier and I'm 15 minutes into the account, they invited me out because they're not as thrilled with the copier as they wanted to be, or maybe they just wanted a lunch, but I'm trying to, but they're still saying, well, it does this, it does that. That's when it's not if I could, it's just, so on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your fill in the blank that I happen to
Okay. Yeah.
fix?
Different
And that's
question.
why, Stacey, I rarely get a 10 on that, because it's
Okay.
kind of awkward. I would if I said, hi, nice to meet you. How would you rate your? Because they're going, I don't want to buy anything today. I'm giving this guy a 10. But I just wanted to clarify that to let you know
Okay,
I
good.
wasn't
Yeah,
messing
different
with you.
type of question.
Yeah.
No, mine is coming at the end.
Yeah.
And I want to assess how long it will, are you ready to buy today? In
Yeah.
some cases, they will be.
Yeah.
Are you going to be ready to buy at some point?
Yep.
If so, let's get that on the calendar to reassess at that time if it's the right time. Or are you never going to be interested? And believe me, a 5 and less, it's God only knows why I was there. And I don't put somebody on the spot. I will by saying, then why did you ask me out? I mean, the point is I called, they said okay. But I might say, is there a reason why it won't ever be a priority for you? That
Right.
would be my question. What
Right.
would be the reason it's never going to be a priority for you?
Right. And what Stacey's doing right now is actually showing a textbook approach to what is now moving into an objection. And rather than respond to it, she's clarifying it, which is the ABCs of objection handling, but we'll save that one for another show.
Yes.
She is Stacey Hall. Selling from your comfort zone, the power of alignment marketing. I want to thank you for coming on a second time. I want to pick up on something that you dropped in there. How about this? I'm almost 40 years as a sales trainer, 31 on my own. I've actually never stepped on the stage with another sales trainer, but if I did, it would be with Stacey Hall. So when Stacey said, hey, you want to bring 2 trainers out, she means it. It's really, Stacey's the only person that I would entertain that thought with. So if you think that's a great idea, I want you to reach out to Stacey. And so Stacey, for your book, for your business, and if they want 2 knuckleheads on that, well, I'll be the knucklehead. You're the rational one. If they want 2 of us on that stage, how do they get a hold of you?
The easiest way is through my website. And I'm also going to say, reach out to Rob, right? So my website is Stacey, Stacey, ANNHALL.com. It couldn't be, it's my name, StaceyAnnHall.com. Contact information is there, my email, all my social sites. But truly, I'm not taking anything away from Rob. People love him. It's just wanted you all to know that if you're like, well, kind of like this, he said, she said kind of dialogue, you think it would be fun at one of your sales trainings, we'd love to be there together.
Yeah, it would make a heck of a panel. Heck of a panel. And believe me, I'm bound and determined to make that work at some point. So anyway, yeah, if you think that's a great idea, you got two great panelists there. All right, enough said. What I really want you to focus on is go to Amazon, go check out that book. I have. It's a great book. She's a great trainer. I go back on 350 podcasts and find how many times I've said that. I don't say that. I know it because I know her personally. I know because we've done a series of shows together on LinkedIn. So I know really what Stacey's about. And Stacey, thank you so much for being on the show. Really, always a pleasure talking to you. And I always learn a couple things. So thanks for a couple new tips today.
I feel the same always. Thank you.
You bet. All right, we'll do it again as well as we can next time, everybody. Until then, stay safe.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, please rate and recommend it on iTunes, Outcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also get more information on this show and Rob at jollis.com.